Hello, everyone. I'm Arleen Smith, and this is Healing the Hearts of Healthcare. Join me each week as we journey together to identify how you can heal your heart from the great sadness. Because the pandemic changed everything for healthcare workers, and you're a healer, and you need to heal your heart so you can continue to do the great work that you were meant to do, which is caring for people. Each week, we will explore new ways to heal through self-discovery, self-reflection, and self-compassion, to reawaken your spirit and to reconnect passion to purpose. Sit back and relax and listen to these words. Absorb them into your mind and let them settle into your heart to allow the healing to occur. Hello, friends. Welcome back. I am so glad that you are here because you recognize that your heart needs healing, and that's okay. And I'm so excited, even if you are a healthcare worker and you did not serve during the pandemic, the truth is that you still will benefit from learning how to heal your heart every day from all of the experiences that you find yourself in when you are showing up at work and you are providing that outstanding care. So I want you to think just for a moment. You entered the field of healthcare because you had this sort of picture in your mind. You imagined that your days were going to be filled with you providing outstanding care, utilizing really good critical thinking skills, meeting and working with all different types of great people, whether that was your patients or their family members. And you really did this because you knew you wanted to make a difference. And that is still true. Even though the work that you do sometimes can feel like it can be a bit overwhelming. And there are times when you feel like you're not certain you can still continue on. But I'm going to challenge you because shouldn't we all be happy? I mean, shouldn't we be operating in a place where we feel content and we feel calm and we feel confident, like we can handle any situation? Well, those of you who may have served during the pandemic, like me, understand that you know what it's like to see insurmountable pain and suffering firsthand. You know what that did to your heart, and you know what it did to those pieces of your soul. As I've said it before in this podcast, I call those times the great sadness because it is that opportunity that we recognize. It is as if those pieces of our heart were peeled away. So it's time. It's time now for you to take action. It's time for you to make change. It's time for you to create the future that you want, which is finding ways again to connect your passion to your purpose. And if you are tired of going through the motions every day and feeling like you're thinking in your head during your silent and quiet moments, why am I still doing this? I'm going to remind you, you have to trust that it can be better, and it will be better because you can manifest a future that provides that to you. That's all within your power. So how do you do that? Well, today we're going to learn a lot, but the first thing I want you to think about is part of this journey is this recognition that we've got to get better as healthcare workers of being able to not only give love, but making sure we're putting ourselves in a situation that we're receiving love. And that comes from that exchange of providing care direct care to those patients or residents or those individuals that you provide care delivery services to. And number two, you have to remember as healthcare workers, we have to focus on self-compassion. I mean, we are wired to be compassionate caregivers. That's part of our DNA. You know that's why you're doing this great, admirable work. But we have to be able to take care of ourselves and show compassion to our insides as well. That's so incredibly important. And the third thing that I don't want you to forget is that you can, through visualization exercises, picture that future that you want. And you can manifest that. And that is 100% possible. And if you're sitting there thinking how or why, I'm going to remind you, in the field of healthcare, we all, as healthcare workers, as those that are healing other people, we need healing ourselves. And for some of you, that even requires that you need to heal that little inner child of yourself. Maybe it was the way you were raised, or maybe it was those experiences that you had as you navigated on this earth. Listen, I'm going to tell you right now that many of these experiences are outside of our control. And if you were with me in one of the earlier podcasts on the importance of forgiving ourselves, I shared with you the work on Tyler Perry's book, Higher is Waiting, where he wrote that letter to the 13-year-old version of himself, forgiving himself of those experiences, but also just using those words to shape the way he was going to see himself going forward. And that's so incredibly important. And you learned just not too long ago that we absolutely have the ability to create those new neural pathways in our brains. And that means that our brains are there to grow and develop and to provide us with opportunities to continue to enhance the way we look at the world and the experiences that we see and the way we experience those experiences. And we also learned during that podcast that our brains are wired towards a negativity bias. And that's why it's so easy for all of us to slip into negativity. It becomes like the Velcro in our brains instead of slipping into positivity that's almost like the Teflon. And again, that's the great work that's in Rick Hanson's book that's titled Hardwiring Happiness. And I love this book. I love everything about the work that Rick is doing in the field of neuropsychology and really breaking it down for us so that we can understand as caregivers that when we experience difficult and challenging and uncomfortable situations, that there are 3 ways that we can engage our minds. And he talks about that in his book. And I'm going to refer to it because I think it's so incredibly important. He explains to us, and this is on page 9 of his book, he explains that first, we have to make sure we're with that experience and we're observing it and we're accepting it for what it is, even if the experience is painful. And you know how this works. We all want to run away from those things that are painful to us. But we've got to sit in it in that moment to really observe it and look at it from a different lens. And the second is when it feels right, that is when we let go of those things that are negative with that experience. And that we relax our bodies and we reduce that tension and we make a conscious effort to actually do that. And the third is after we've released that negativity, we have to replace it with something that's positive. And I love that he points out in the book over and over again how rewiring our brains with those neural pathways allows us to hardwire that happiness directly into our brains. It's so incredibly important. And I'm also going to point out one additional thing that I think is just relevant for the work that Rick does in this book, which is he goes a little bit deeper to explain that it's not just about those things, but it's about the how we do this. So how do we enrich all of these experiences so that we can actually see them for what they are? And I love this. On page 112 of this book, he really highlights those three areas and talks about it in a deeper sense. And I want to share them with you because I think it's so important as healthcare workers to not lose sight of how we do this every day, every single day, in every single situation. And it's so incredibly important. So the first method is the duration. So you know this because you learned this when you listened to my session with Veronica Barber, because she used some of Rick's work in that podcast. You have to stay in that moment for at least 5 to 10 seconds. The longer, the better, right? And that includes those positive experiences as well. If you stay in the negative for 10 seconds, then it's only rewiring that hardwiring of your brain. We've got to push forward and make sure that we're doing that. So whether that is you're having a meal and you're consciously making sure that you're just slowing down to enjoy every single moment and to allow your body to take in all of the different senses, or you're walking around outside and you're noticing what's happening in your environment, that is your conscious choice, your ability to actually do that. And the second is really focusing on the intensity of the experience. So the higher the intensity experience, the greater effect it's going to have on promoting that formation of those new synapses in your brain. And that is going to make it more pleasurable, which it releases dopamine, and it's just going to make you feel better in the long run. So make sure you're allowing for those really strong experiences where you're feeling joy and happiness, that you're allowing that intensity to build, and you're recognizing that you need to do that. And number 3 is, he calls it multimodality, and I love this. It's trying to really look at that situation from the sense of how it feels, how that experience feels throughout my whole entire body, and being aware of my ability to breathe through and focus on my breathing when I'm in those challenging moments, but then allowing my body to feel all the effects of those positive things. And again, there's lots of ways you can take this great work into the work that you do every day, because you are involved in so many different things. And part of this journey in healing is going to be for you to tap into those creative areas of your life that you've sort of pushed aside because you felt it wasn't necessary at the time to focus on it. Listen, my background, my current role, I'm a nursing educator. I spend a lot of time developing and creating content so that healthcare workers can have information that they need to actually practice and do what they need to do under regulations and standards of practice. And whenever I'm developing any content for any education that I teach, I always use a method that's very simple, but it works. It works in nearly every situation. And that is, I really try to create content that actually activates the mind, the heart, and it creates a pathway by telling people the how. And so when I talk about mind, I mean it activates you from an intellectual perspective. It makes you really look at things sort of from that analytical capabilities and that ability to solve problems. And when I talk about teaching from the heart, it means that I'm activating your emotions. And a lot of times I'll do that through storytelling or inviting people to self-reflect, look inward, look at it from an empathetic lens of how they would want that situation if it happened to them. And the path is very simple. It's often the why and the how. So it's not just always the regulatory aspects that we focus on, because regulations are incredibly important in the work that we do as healthcare workers, but it's more than that. We take care of human beings. That is our job every single day. So we have a duty and an obligation to make sure that our standards of practice, that we are operating those standards of practice as we should be. So I'm going to invite you to use the same approach when you're looking at things at work or with certain patients or with different coworkers. I really want you to look at it from that lens of your intellect, your heart, and like what should that path look like? And that is so incredibly important. So don't forget, for the mind, you are a healer. You know you. You know what should be the best version of you. And you know that to heal other people, to do this day in and day out over a long duration of period of time, it means that you must prioritize taking care of yourself. That's something that you have to regularly build into your routine. And if you don't, you will run the risk of burnout, and you will run the risk that you will want to flee from the job that you were designed to do. And in terms of your heart, I always want you to look inward. It's so incredibly important, because when you hold on to any experience, you will soon identify what is the cause of that. Is it a negative experience or is it a positive? And I'm going to remind you, if it tends to be negative, I want you to think about your own environment and what's happening in that environment. Are you getting the support that you need from coworkers and peers? And if not, how are you advocating to make sure, hey, we all need to come together and work together? Because to do this great work, if you haven't figured it out, we have to do it together as a team. And that path is you being courageous enough to say, you know what, I'm making a change. I want to make sure that I'm actually going to make our field better because I'm taking care of me. You know, it reminds me of when I think about growth and our potential as human beings, I'm reminded of the koi fish. You've probably seen koi fishes before, but did you know that a koi fish can grow either to be 4 inches or 42 inches? It depends on the environment that fish is placed into. The larger the tank, the greater that fish will grow. And so for some of you, I'm going to challenge you, it means thinking about your tank. Is it big enough? Are you utilizing it? Are you allowing yourself an opportunity to grow and develop? Are you surrounding yourself with people that are going to build you up, that are going to help you be the best version of you? Or are you one of those people, or are you around some of those people that instead are spending their time complaining about all the things that are going wrong and why can't it be better? We have to think of these things because subtly over time, again, we know from the research on the way our brains work, this is what goes into the rewiring of those neural pathways and the way we see our world. So your work has meaning. It has tremendous meaning, and not everybody can do this work. And the truth is that it's difficult and challenging work because you often experience terrible things. Many times. For some of you, it's day in and day out, and you can replay those over and over in your head like a movie. I get it. So how can you create a future where you're using those new neural pathways and you're allowing yourself to actually create a new path where you can see going forward that you really want to have that future-oriented mindset where you feel confident and you feel like you can do what you need to do and do it every day and do it well? Well, I love the work that's in this book called Journal to the Self. And it's actually a book by Kathleen Adams. it's really interesting because it's a book that is really designed more for people that are really interested in self-understanding through writing, reading, and creating a journal for your life. I love this book. I think it's so insightful, and it's got so many great examples. And in this book, there's a really great example of how we can look at our lives and what we want to do more of and what we want to do less of. And I love it because she reminds us to take out a simple piece of paper. And I've shown you one right here, right? And on one side, we're going to list the plus, and on the other side, we're going to list the minus, and we're going to fold it in half. And we're going to give ourselves sort of that freedom just in 15 minutes to actually just do this simple exercise. And I love it. You can do it on a piece of paper. You can do it in your journal. It really doesn't matter. The most important thing is that you do it. And so you're going to set a timer, and you're going to give yourself 5 minutes. And in that 5 minutes, you're going to brainstorm, and you're going to write down those things that you want to see in yourself. You're going to put them under the plus column. And those things that you don't want to see in yourself, you're going to put that in the negative column. And when that 5-minute timer is up and it goes ding, you're going to use the remaining time, which could be 5 or 10 minutes, to just allow yourself to do some free-form writing and brainstorming. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, for me, I would draw a line across here at the middle of the piece of paper, and then I would ask yourself a series of questions. And the book has a whole bunch of different questions that you can use. I've selected just a few that I think any healthcare worker could use. So maybe you're asking yourself, what would you do if you weren't afraid? If there were no fear there? How would that change your answers? Or what gives you joy? And I'm going to tell you, this is a hard one for people. I've asked people this time and time again to focus on those things that give them joy. And for some people, it makes them feel very uneasy. They can't really quantify this. And I believe sometimes it's difficult to look inward and say, wait, what are those things that put me in that natural state of joy? And how am I making sure I'm integrating them into my everyday? Another question you could ask yourself is, where are you applying your God-given gifts, talents, and strengths? Like, how are you using that every single day? And if you're not, you might want to think about that. So conversely, you could also ask yourself, what about my weaknesses or my areas where I know I need to get better at or stronger at? How can I do that? How can I improve that? Or it could simply be something like, what can I do to push myself forward? What's one thing I can do to commit to every single day to push myself forward? So again, this is a challenging exercise, but I tell you, I promise you, something magical happens to us when we put pen to paper. It's like we're setting our intention and we're putting it out in the universe. And it's so important for us to do because this is what's within your control. See, you control your thoughts, you control how those thoughts come into your mind, and we do this through practice. We do this through our words. But to do it, we must build in some time for that quiet, still silence. And we've talked about that, whether that you do that every day through prayer, whether you do that through every day through meditation, whether you do that by sitting in your car for 5 minutes and just allowing the silence to settle in. And again, it's so important as healthcare workers because remember in our very first podcast, I highlighted the great work of Viktor Frankl in this book, Man's Search for Meaning. And I explained to you how Viktor Frankl used imagery and he used visualization to get him through those toughest times. And so it's incredibly important that you create sort of that mental and visual picture of yourself going forward. What does that look like for you? And you have to believe deep down in your heart and soul, like I do now. Like I didn't believe back then in the pandemic, but I know it now. These experiences that we go through, these challenges that we go through, are all experiences that we're meant to have while we're here in life school. We are learning things about ourselves in that journey, and we are learning how we need to move forward, either differently or better or in a different manner. That is what life is about. It's about learning from those experiences and embracing that. And you have to believe that. And if you have trouble with this exercise and you really can't put that pen to paper and do the plus and the minus, again, I'm going to tell you in this book, Journal to the Self, there's so many great examples. Maybe it's just that you ask yourself a question once a day, like, I am happiest when, ... and you fill in those blanks. Or it could be, I am so grateful when, ... Or it could be, I am so appreciative of ... The most important thing with that exercise is really, it doesn't matter what necessarily the question is. It's just that you're actually starting to think about things and you're thinking about engaging your mind in a different way. Listen, I like to think of all this as like all of these sort of mini mental exercises. I think of it as almost like speed dating for our brains. You know, I've never been on a speed dating experience, but I've seen them before, right? People are learning as much as they can about someone in a short period of time. And based on that experience, they go with a gut feeling of how they believe or they feel they have maybe a certain connection. It's the same way with the way you feel. And remember, you know you best. So give yourself this gift of your time and actually do this, because I promise you, when you get to know the things about you, you are going to feel like you can get to a safe place where you can explore self-discovery and you can look at it from that childlike mindset of awe and curiosity. So how can you actually integrate something like this into your daily practice and form new habits? Well, I'm going to give you 3 examples of how you could do this every day, every week, and maybe once a month. So a daily practice that you could actually do is, like we talked about in Rick Hanson's great work, is hold on to those moments of happiness for at least 10 seconds. Making sure that you are self-aware when you are finding that you are having a moment that it either brings you joy or happiness, that you hold on to the feeling and you allow it to happen, right? So that if you're delivering care to somebody and they are praising you and thanking you and they're talking kind words about you, that you're just allowing yourself to feel that experience for 10 seconds. Like how it is meant to feel from the top to the bottom of your body. And the weekly practices is I love, you all know, Lori Smith was in a guest host on our podcast, and she runs the Flow Challenge. And one of the exercises she does is a daily word of the day, right? You don't need a daily word. You can do a weekly word, right? Maybe you choose a meaningful word and you live it every day. Not only do you live it, but you search for it and you look for it. And maybe that word is, I need to have love. I want to look for love. Or maybe it's, I want to look for joy, or I want to look for courage, or I want to look for curiosity. I want to look for softness. I want to look for happiness. It doesn't matter what the word is. Choose the word that has meaning for you. You'll know the word because it's going to speak to you. And then look for those moments throughout the course of a week. And then monthly, I'm going to tell you, take those things that you wrote in your plus column for the month and actually think about how you're actually going to practice these things and make sure you're integrating them into your daily practice every day. And for some of you, I know this may sound silly, but as we learn new habits, sometimes we need a visual representation. Listen, I did this in my leadership career. I can still visualize one of my dear work BFFs. Her name was Jen. We served together for many years, side by side, and I think fondly of her every single day. But there was a point in my career where there were things I needed to work on, and she was my BFF. And I would say to her, do me a favor, I'm working on this skill or this task. And can you just like kick me under the table, right? If in a meeting I do this or I say this, because I'm really trying to get better at it. And I want to make sure I'm self-aware. So leverage it, right? You could put it on a sticky and bring it to work every day to remind yourself, like maybe I need to be more patient, or maybe I just need to be more empathetic, and I need to understand that the people that I care for are coming from a place where they're not well. And so every little thing they experience is going to be much more powerful and painful to them. And the point is the point of all this is that you have a choice every single day. You can choose to just go to work every day and live in the status quo, right? You can just go to work, go through the motions. If you have a good experience, great. If not, meh. Or you can choose to be in a place where you make a choice to grow every single day in life school, where you are remembering that the lessons that you experience are designed to propel you to somewhere forward. And that maybe it's your opportunity to look at it from that lens of, what do I need to pay more attention to when I'm delivering care to another person? And that's a way to start your own healing journey, is to look inward, right? It's to look at you. It's to look at those things that bring you joy that you might have neglected for a period of time, and to go back and focus on that. So whether, for you, you've slipped away from your daily routine of going to the gym or going and doing yoga or sitting in meditation or just cooking like a nice, healthy meal, whatever it is, that's what you want to try to get back to. And trust me when I tell you, you're going to feel better doing it. And I know it's hard work, but listen, this is life. None of it's easy. We're here in life school, and I'm teaching you how to do it differently. And my goal for you is really that you look at this from a lens of, I'm a caregiver. I was designed to do this great work on this earth, and I don't want anybody or anything to rob me of that opportunity to give outstanding care. And I'm going to make sure I'm healing myself, and I'm taking care of the things that maybe I need to work on so that doesn't spill over in the care that I deliver. And for some of you, that might be caring for your inner child, like we talked about in earlier podcasts, because the past is the past, right? We can't dictate the experiences that happen to us as we've been growing on this earth. But as adults, now we absolutely can. We can make a conscious choice to look at this differently. So my call to action will always be to you as a caregiver to really look more inward at how you are outwardly showing love and compassion in your workplace. And I know what you're thinking. You ever see the people that I work with? You wouldn't be showing love either. Listen, be that person that leads by example. Don't worry about how other people are. You need to be a light bearer. You need to be a healer. And that means you showing the best version of yourself to everybody in every situation. And that means if family comes to you in stressful situations and they're angry and they're upset, and it happens to be about 20 different things that happened prior to you taking on that shift, that you're just allowing yourself to be still in that moment, you're listening, and you're saying words like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. Let's see what we can do to make it better. Right? Sometimes that's all people need to hear when they are angry and frustrated. And I'm going to remind you, if you look at our world today, there's a whole lot of people operating from that place where they are angry and frustrated and their wick is very, very short. So the likelihood that something bad is going to happen and just put someone over the edge in a healthcare setting where they have no control and they're not seeing the care that they want from their loved ones is very high. So as caregivers, we have the ability to just bring that temperature down low and to help people see that it's going to be okay. We're going to fix things if it's not right. And don't worry and get caught up in the blame or it's not my fault or it's just easier to say something negative or huff or puff or walk out the room gossiping and talking to somebody else. I mean, that's not what a healer does. In my world, that's not what a healer is designed to do. A healer is consistently providing healing in every single situation. So let that be your response to every single challenging situation. And allow yourself to replace those feelings of pain and suffering that maybe you see in others, like your patients or even yourself, with love and compassion. Listen, I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, and I just want to remind you again, thank you for all you do every single day. I know that you are making a conscious choice to stay in the workforce, and I know that the work you do is hard and it's challenging and it's extremely difficult. But I'm also going to remind you, it's full of rewards and feelings that you are connecting something that you were born and designed to do. Your passion, something that is just meaning, has special meaning to you, to another human being on this earth that needs it more than anything. And you should be incredibly proud of that. And that's what you should hold on to on your days when you're feeling like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. Because you can. I'm telling you, you can. And if you put these practices into work, you're going to walk away feeling better about yourself. I hope you join me on a future podcast. And until next time, everyone, take care of yourself.